Thank you for joining us today for Cape Chronicle. I'm Audra Kane. Today we'll be talking with a couple of big voices in the Cape area. First, Mayor Bob Fox will tell us what to expect from Cape Girardeau city government in 2020. Next, we'll check in with news anchor Kathy Sweeney on her 25 years with KFBS TV. That's all ahead on Cape Chronicle.
I've been delivering Meals on Wheels to Leon for 13 years.
It's always a pleasure to see you.
Leon has definitely inspired me to put more into my relationships. He really cared for his wife, who was ailing for quite a while, in such a touching way that inspired me to be a better person.
Drop off a warm meal and get more than you expect. Volunteer at americaletsdolunch.org.
America, let's do lunch. Welcome to Cape Chronicle. I'm Audra Kane. The City of Cape Girardeau government makes local headlines almost every day, but most infrastructure, safety, and quality of life services just run quietly in the background. Here to give us an inside look on what to expect in 2020 is Mayor Bob Fox. Welcome, Mayor.
Glad to be here.
So, when the council looks back on 2019, what community achievements do you feel like stand out for what has been happening? Let's start with, say, the catfish.
Catfish were fantastic for the community. We revitalized Capahal Park, and they were a big part of that.
Well,
it's a family entertainment venue that is just not available everywhere.
There have been some beautiful changes to the baseball stadium, and the university has taken advantage of that as well, right?
Yes, they have.
So what do you, I'm assuming that you've been to plenty of games.
Yes.
And what would you say is the most exciting part of attending a catfish game?
Just the quality of play. Those players are major college players, and many of them may be playing in the major leagues one day. And it's amazing watching, I spend a lot of time watching my grandkids play, from T-ball to 14-year-old playing competitive baseball, and they're just like pros.
Yeah,
and they're good.
And they are. It's exciting to watch. Good. So some other developments for the city, we passed a capital tax for water, City Hall, the airport, and the streets. Was that a struggle, or was it something that you felt like everybody supported?
I don't think it was a struggle. I thought it was supported very well.
Okay.
The city has done an excellent job in recent years when they do a tax renewal. Mm-hmm. We delineate the specific projects we're going to do, and we spend the money wisely, and that's important because the people want that.
And the City Hall project, where are we timeline as far as that is concerned?
They are beginning the design concepts right now.
Mm-hmm.
They had a meeting a week or two ago with the architects and city staff to kind of delineate space needs and looking at that building and what they're going to do. It's exciting. A
little bit of posturing from different departments on who wants what?
Yeah. But it's exciting to be able to take the most iconic building in Cape Girardeau mm-hmm. and reuse it and use it for, forever.
Well, and we're talking about the courthouse that,
right.
Of course, it sits
and
up
the old
on
library.
The hill. Mm-hmm.
And we're going to combine those two buildings together.
Oh, that'll be awesome. And it has such a beautiful view. It has, like you said, an iconic presence. Plus, it didn't hurt it was in a movie. And
that's
that
true.
Kind of
It's
nice. What about the airport? What developments are you looking at?
The airport, we have to complete and update the master plan first.
Okay.
And that's occurring now. Should be done before the end of this year. There are a couple of projects that need to be done as part of that master plan, the perimeter fencing mm-hmm. and some taxiway repair. After that's completed, once those plans are laid in place and that plan is finished, we can begin terminal design and location and that sort of thing, and then also the tower.
Question about the streets too, and that comes from, I thought I saw a report about Independence. Is that right?
Yes.
That Independence the work has started on that, and so
the design starting. There are so many street projects, and what people don't realize with our Transportation Trust Fund, we've done 5 of those. And those projects are not done until the tax money is collected. We're not bonding money to do that. We're doing it as the taxes are collected. So we're to the point now this April where we will vote on a new TTF 5-year plan, TTF 6, but we still have some major projects in TTF 5 that are not finished yet. West End Boulevard is under construction. It looked like a war zone this fall. You've got Independence, we've got Fountain Street. There's a section of Main Street we're going to read. So those big projects still remain.
And some of those will be underway in
This
2020.
year, yes.
Okay, but not necessarily all of them completed in 2020. Right. Okay, so something for people to look forward to, and then also to prepare for, because if they're headed in a certain direction, you know, they may have to reroute for that. You mentioned West End, and that kind of leads me into a conversation about Porch. Right. Having named an executive director. For anyone who doesn't know what Porch is, can you explain just briefly what that is?
Porch is a local group, it's a local committee. Now I'm trying to remember the acronym. People Organized to Revitalize Community Healing.
Okay.
And we saw the Purpose-Built initiative in Atlanta, and when Neil Glass went down there with the school district, he was just amazed at what their schools have accomplished. And the school district, education's a big part of that.
Right.
And they have changed the way they educate kids in Jefferson, in that southern part of Cape. And it's now a STEM school. And I could go on and on and on about the education. But it's already started.
Right.
And in this first year, their attendance went from like 70% to 98%.
Right. We had Lee Ragsdale on to talk about it, and
I mean,
like her
it's
enthusiasm
exciting.
overflows.
And I just love to be around her, and just it rubs off.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
There's so much happening there, and they've got so much more parental involvement, and it's great. But there are more than just the education part. There's a housing part, which we will begin to deal with this year. There is just a redevelopment part. The housing part is kind of started. They got Liberty Apartments going down there. That's going to help. They've changed their concept though, because when they first started in Atlanta, they wanted a mixed income housing center, basically one big building, and they've gotten away from that, and they're going to home ownership.
Oh,
people don't own homes.
That can be very
anymore.
validating.
And it can.
Yeah.
And there are programs out there, federal programs and other grants that are available to help people get started with in the home ownership process with taking care of their down payment. Owning a home is cheaper than renting.
Absolutely. And what do you have if you rent? Nothing. You have nothing to show for it.
And it gives them a sense of ownership, and it's a great thing. And then the porch concept came in, because if you've driven down Sprigg and some of those streets on South Benton and whatnot, they all had porches on the front.
They did.
Or maybe it's a little porch on the back. And that's where the porch concept came from. And they want to revitalize some of those homes, build some new homes, all with porches, and get back to the time where families would talk back and forth or across the street, and neighbors, and it's a community healing process.
Rebuilding the community and creating that neighborhood of
and
support,
when that happens,
that support system.
Then you've got people working again, and you've got people with jobs, and you have other redevelopment that will occur business-wise that will stimulate the economy, and it's a great concept.
Well, and so I mentioned they've named their executive director. Who is that?
Julian Watkins.
And tell us what to look for from him.
Julian is a unique individual. When I first met Julian, he had just been hired here as director of the Red Cross. And he is from Southern Illinois. He has a law degree. He's very sharp. He's a great public speaker. He's the perfect person for this.
Well, and that is high praise coming from you, because you've owned your own business. You've had your position in the community for a long time, and so to have you praising him, that should mean a lot.
I know Julian. I know he will there's a little training process with the purpose-built part, and I think he's going to make a trip or two to Atlanta. And once we get that official designation, then there are all sorts of purpose-built grants that might be available to help us get some of this done, and it opens you up to lots of other federal grants too. So.
Well, and you mentioned housing, and I think in 2020 that's something I'm interested in hearing your perspective on what the challenges are to the city, and maybe its responsibility to curbing violence. And you feel pretty strongly about housing being a part of that.
Housing's a big part of that. When you have nuisance properties and you have properties that are dilapidated, that people still try to rent, or properties that are dilapidated that homeless people will get into, and they break the door down, or maybe there's no windows on them. It just creates a situation where bad things happen.
Right.
And we don't want that. And it's a long process to deal with nuisance properties, because you have to go through all the legalese and all that stuff to condemn it. There are many of them that have been torn down. There are a lot of vacant lots down there now. And as we progress through this, our hands have been tied somewhat by the state legislature. Senate Bill 5 and Senate Bill 572 especially added nuisance properties to one of those things that you're very limited as to what you can do to violators.
And the violator's not the renter,
it's
the
property
owner. Right.
And some of those property owners don't even live here.
Right.
And that makes it even harder to deal with. But we're trying to correct some of those things and move forward, and we've got money set aside to take care of nuisance properties every year, and we're going to expand on it and continue it. And once we find the appropriate people who will come in and help us with the housing, some of those will be torn down, some of them will be rebuilt, but it's a long process. It doesn't happen overnight.
Well, and you mentioned that there's money set aside to take care of those nuisance properties. That's part of the budget. Are there any budget challenges for 2020 that you're facing?
We've always got budget challenges, especially with the sales tax decline, and that's another reason why we were at the legislature. And we're going to make an effort to have somebody with city staff and our council be in Jeff City at least once or twice a month through this whole session. We want to keep tabs on those things that are happening. We need the state legislature to handle the use tax or internet tax or whatever they want to do, and make that a fair tax, a state sales tax on items that are bought online.
Right.
That in itself would help us to the tune of almost $2 million a year.
I was just getting ready to ask you if we had an estimate on that. So
And
$2 million, that's a chunk.
And that's that will get us back to where we need to be. But then you got to keep looking at the future.
Right.
And we are in the process of doing a comprehensive plan to look at ways we have to streamline services, ways we can cut costs, ways we can generate more revenue. So it's a long process that we're going through to deal with all this.
Feeling pretty good about the future and the developments that are coming.
Oh, and I ask city staff to give the council a monthly project report, because when you think about this, year before last, we passed the Parks and Rec Stormwater Initiative. Besides all of the street projects that are going on constantly with TTF, besides City Hall and the airport and the water projects that are going on around, you've also got Parks and Rec and Stormwater.
Right.
They're constantly doing that. There are projects going on all the time.
So keeping you informed, it helps you know whether you're on track or not.
When someone asks a question, well, what are they doing here? What are they doing here?
You need to know.
Just Parks and Rec, for example. They're in the process now of trying to find land to do the baseball complex. Capitol Hall Park renovation starts this year. It's not going to be pretty. When they drain Capitol Hall Lagoon and they dig it out and get all the dirt out of there, they're going to rebuild that whole thing with handicap accessibility, with lighting, with a fishing dock. It's going to have better drainage and better filtration. It's going to be more of a retention basin. At the same time, we're going to renovate the Rose Garden. They're going to do Cherry Hill. They're going to do the municipal band shelter. They're going to put parking in down there by it. It's going to completely renovate that park, and it starts this year.
You have a lot on your plate to talk about.
They're
in
looking
2020.
they're looking at 2 places we can put new parks in South Cape. We're putting restrooms in Indian
That's
Park.
what we can talk about next time.
Yes.
Parks in South Cape. That sounds awesome. All right, I'm going to put a pin in that. We'll talk about it next time.
I could go on and on.
Mayor Fox, thank you so much for coming
welcome.
in to chat with us. I always love hearing from you. We've been talking with Mayor Bob Fox of the City of Cape Girardeau, and on the way next, Kathy Sweeney on her 25-plus year career with KFVS 12 and local reporting. That's next on Cape Chronicle.
Hi! Hoping for a crisp breeze to help keep you alert. Oh, he took a sip of water too. That'll probably help. You were probably gonna turn down the radio too, so you could focus, right?
Probably okay isn't okay.
Right.
If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
I think the water line is what really drove it home. I blew on him.
At Southeast Missouri State, we've been launching the extraordinary careers of educators for nearly 150 years. But that's the thing about educators. They're always ready to learn more, discover new paths, and push themselves to the next level. With our new online educational leadership programs, you can earn the credentials needed to move up in your career. With flexibility for your schedule, accelerated courses, and an affordable price, together we can transform our learning communities and prepare you to conquer your goals.
Welcome back to Cape Chronicle. I'm Audra Kane. Many of you welcome Kathy Sweeney into your homes as an anchor for the KFVS 12 Evening News. She was born and raised in Chicago, graduated from Southern Illinois University. She's active in the community, having worked with Aging Matters, the Community Partnership, EPIC, and others. Kathy, it must be kind of weird because you're sitting on your own set.
It is weird. It looks great.
And you're on the other side.
I know, and we're talking in person and not through social media.
I know.
Like we normally do.
And I get to ask you the questions.
I know.
Do you have this happen to you very often?
No, I don't.
The first time we did this together was in like 2012.
Yes, and that was on the radio.
It was on the radio. This is a little different because now I'm having you sitting here watching me reading off the teleprompter.
Yes,
which
I'm impressed.
I don't do that.
You know, it's a trick that not everybody realizes we do. And the people who get to come to tours inside our studio get to see it, and they always ask about the big box on the front of the camera.
Yeah,
so.
it's not good for ad-libbing, and so I always wonder about when you're thrown something new, when you're thrown breaking news on the news. How do you handle that? Because I know how I do it on the radio, because I'm like throwing papers and pulling it up online.
That's kind of what we do too. I mean, I keep my, I have 2 cell phones. Not that I'm proud of that, but I have a work cell phone and then I have my own personal phone. So I keep my work cell phone on the desk with me at all times because you never know when stories are going to break. Right. Oftentimes we're working on something that we've started in the morning and more information's developing throughout the day. You know, if there was a crime committed, there could be someone in custody by the 5 o'clock news. And so when that happens, honestly, I mean, and people may have seen this once or twice, I will literally read it off my phone. If I get a text from and I'm on my phone and I'm reading a text from a sheriff or a police chief, we handle it just as you would normally handle breaking news, literally on the fly. And what we do have the ability to do, a little trick, is there's a button we can push so the words go away and you see yourself in the teleprompter. Now, when Grant and Laura and Lisa and Brian do the weather, that's the way they do it, because they don't, obviously they're not scripted. So if we're doing breaking news like that, oftentimes I'll just flip the prompter over and see my own reflection, basically. And that way I won't get distracted by maybe words up there versus what I'm trying to convey to folks.
That's probably the biggest part of the thing for me, is that I get distracted by the words up there.
You can get distracted.
I'll close my eyes.
And if someone's standing next to the camera and they got to scratch, or they're messing with their phone or whatever, you can be easily distracted.
Throw you off. Well, you can never tell when you're doing the news that you're the consummate professional.
Well, I appreciate that.
25 years?
25 years at KFES last June, so 30 years in the market. So this is my 31st year.
And how does that feel?
You know, I feel blessed. I feel privileged. It's hard to believe it's been that long. I can still remember my SIU Carbondale days and my first experience in front of a camera in a radio television class. So, you know, in some ways, you think about all the things you've seen over the years and you're like, wow, look at all I've gotten to do. It's been just a wonderful ride. But then on the other hand, it's like, how could it be this many years?
Yeah, it has flown by, because I think you've been in the industry 1 year longer than me.
Yeah.
And it just seems to fly by. And we were actually talking on social media about things that have thrown us on the air. Announcing Prince's death, for me, was probably one of the few times I've actually cried on the radio. And I struggled to get through that report.
That was a really tough day for me. I actually, and people who know me know I'm a huge Prince fan. His music basically shaped my entire adult life. Long story I won't get into, but I was in the newsroom, and you know, there was that health scare he had a few days earlier, and then literally our web executive producer looked up from her computer and said, oh my gosh, Prince is dead. And I just stood up from my desk and I turned off my computer and I got my keys in my purse and I went to my car and I drove around Cape for probably 2 to 3 hours and just would pull over somewhere and just cry.
And I think that that's something that a lot of viewers may not remember, is that you're human.
Well, and we all are. And you know what, the thing I found, and maybe you have too, the older I get, the more comfortable I feel being more myself. And you know, there is you have to be an impartial deliverer of the news of the day, and when you do an interview, you have to, you know, go about it in a professional way and handle life that way. But the older I've gotten, the more I've realized that, you know, things affect me. And, you know, I became a wife, and then I became a mother, and then I became a wife again, and now I'm a grandmother. And so there are things that affect me like they affect anybody. And honestly, I've had some people very kindly drop off gifts to me over the years, Prince-related gifts. There's a viewer who I'm also in a lot of contact with on social media, and she's a huge Prince fan, and we've both been to Paisley Park, so we share our pictures and our experiences. And so, you know, people get to know you, and the longer I do this, the more comfortable I am with sharing parts of my life. And it's to this day, if there's anything related to Prince, dozens of people beyond my close personal friends and family will send me the picture. Did you see this? You know, this. Did you see the Prince Christmas tree? Did you see the little boy dressed as Prince for Halloween? And that just reminds me that folks are thinking about me beyond just bringing them the news. They're thinking about me as a person, which is really sweet.
It is. It's nice. And I know that you out in public, I'm sure that people will approach you and say hello. Then there are probably times when people want to, and they're
you know,
afraid
it's
to.
funny. I always tell people the experience I enjoy the most, and a lot of folks do this, and I think it's really neat. They don't make a big deal if they see you, but they acknowledge it. Like when I'm checking out at the TJ Maxx and I've got my ball cap on and no makeup and my sweats, and I think I'm, you know, being really slick, and and the cashier will say, you know, well, Kathy, did you see blah blah? You know, and you know, it's folks who will just acknowledge that they know it's you. You know, folks have a lot of really kind things to say, which I've always really appreciated. I've never had anyone come up to me in person and say, I really don't like you, and here's why. And, you know, and again, everyone's welcome to their opinion, and I have opinions about the people I let into my living room, just as folks do with us. So, But everyone's always very, very kind, which I appreciate.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about why you love your job, because I know that you do. You don't do something for 31 years, but I've also seen you go after investigative reports, and that you really feel intensely about that when you find something to investigate.
Yeah, it's a curiosity that honestly got me into the business to begin with. If I could have done this job or could still do this job without being on TV, I would. That's just something that came along with it. But I've always been curious and I've always wanted to know things. And so the longer I've done this, the more opportunities I've had to do in-depth reporting, which is wonderfully fascinating for me. I love digging through documents and looking for information and maybe stumbling upon something that maybe I wasn't expecting. It's just, those are the kind of stories I enjoy. And when you do something for a really long time, anyone who's had a long career knows you're always looking for some way to do something a little different. And so when I can do a story that I haven't done before, and I'm getting to a point where I'm probably running low on stories I haven't done before, but that's a way that keeps me energized in what I do.
Is there a special feature called Heartland Unsolved?
There is.
And are you involved?
I am, yeah. In fact, yes, a beloved former coworker of mine, Bill Allen, and I came up with that concept. We were brought a cold case to hopefully do a story on, but it was the death of a 12-year-old boy here in Cape back in 1960. And it was like, well, how can we tell his story if we can't show you pictures of the crime scene or video, because there was no video back then. So, we embarked on a journey where we started to do some reenactments to take viewers back in time to those various scenes. And so we started off with that case, and we've done some from the 70s, from the 80s, from the 90s. It's kind of evolved over time where we're not real heavy into reenactments as much as we can use the spotlight to shine it on cold cases. I had the distinct honor of following the Sherry and Megan Shear case out of Portageville for years, all the way up until it was actually solved. So it's given us the opportunity to work alongside investigators and families and tell their stories.
Well, I know that they can find it with KFVS, find you on KFVS. Thanks. You know what? You're going to have to come back. We're just going to have to come back. We're going to have to talk about some of these great stories on Heartland Unsolved. Thanks, Kathy. Thanks so much for coming in. That's Kathy Sweeney of KFVS 12. Thank you for joining us today for Cape Chronicle. The program is a collaboration between the Southeast Missouri State University Department of Mass Media and the City of Cape Girardeau. Our producer is Nicolette Brennan. Our executive producer is Dr. Jim Dufek, and I'm Audra Kane. Thanks for watching.